So I lifted up my third story window. I threw my arms out like a lunatic, full bearded. I look like a psychopath. And I screamed, "Shame the!" They're screaming, "Shame the NRA!" And I screamed out, "Arm the teachers!" I think that's where that mantra comes from, by the way.
Toasting to triumphs and celebrating the unbreakable American spirit. Welcome to Choir Practice. Brought to you by Law Enforcement Today.
All right, so anyone that follows law enforcement today has probably, well, you've definitely seen this guy. Who are you?
I'm Bernie Hallam's retired law enforcement and co-host of the show.
This dude has traveled all over the country with me and me with him. We've done shoots together in, I don't even know how many states. We've traveled all over Texas together. We're on a TV show together based out of Florida. I guess you should just introduce yourself.
So, my name is Larry Ward. I am the president of Constitutional Rights PAC and Political Media Inc. And I had the privilege of being around this wise ass 24/7 a lot of days over the last couple of years, and it's been a lot of fun.
You doing okay?
Doing all right.
Just say the privilege of being around. I see how it is. All right, we start off every episode with a couple of shout outs. First of all, my friends at Warrior 12 Apparel. I love this shirt, Trust in God, Not Politicians. Probably the most popular shirt that I've ever worn because people don't know what it means politically. It's not really a political thing. It basically says politicians all suck and we should trust in God instead. So
Except
Eli Crane, man. It's the best man to ever walk the earth besides Jesus.
who else?
Donald Trump.
Yeah, because I think you're his illegitimate son, to be honest with you. And that's okay. That's a good
Look at
thing.
these guys today. Speaking of following that same lines there, he who kneels before God can stand before anyone. Absolutely love this. I think I'm going to get a tattoo similar to that when I'm man enough to actually start getting tattoos
Come on,
like
bro.
you.
Join the ink world. Let's go.
So how do we meet?
We met through working with Mammoth Nation, and
Oh yeah.
they're a client of ours, and we love Mammoth Nation and what they're doing for the parallel economy, and we started working together, and then you woke up with some weird dream one day.
Yeah, I legit, that's how it happened. I mean, the long and short of it, so we started working together on that, and then I had this vision, if you will. Was it you that said in the Bible, it said, young men have dreams, old men have visions? And so I thought I had a dream. Larry made it very clear I had a vision. But we ended up, as a result of this dream, we had a big group of individuals come together in Delray Beach, Florida for a cancel culture conference. We had some serious pipe hitters, from Kevin Sorbo, the original Hercules, to Bo Snerdley, as he's known, James Golden, Rush Limbaugh's producer, to just some titans in the financial and education and health industries. It was a real blessing, and we've just continued growing the work that we've done together ever since. And then we have the TV show. You want to talk about that?
Absolutely, we're on Boom America together with Karen Harrington, and it's about helping businesses get through their whatever kind of struggles that they're in, and get to the next level, and we've helped quite a number of them, do really well since the show. So
And thank God for you guys, because unlike Bar Rescue, you have a lot of success.
yeah, I like that.
Hey, thanks for the new stuff. I'm closing.
The idea behind the show, Kevin Harrington's the original shark from Shark Tank. So it's like Bar Rescue meets Shark Tank. So we're on his A team, or his just sharks, if you will. But we've worked with these businesses to transform them and make them super profitable. But what really resonated with me with this guy early on was that you don't pull any punches when it comes to your values and how you've grown all of your companies built around your value set. So talk to me a little bit about your hiring process and how you instill values in your business.
Well, much like yourself, we hire people with the right value set. Kyle. Obviously, a lot of you know about the snowflake test. We have essentially the same test. We didn't actually put a name to it and didn't do 15,000 Fox appearances on it, but somebody is a better public relations person than myself, I guess. But
Media whore, one might say.
one or the other. But congratulations on that. But we have the same kind of hiring philosophy. We're looking for people with the right values, and I think that's the most important thing in terms of hiring somebody. You want to make sure, particularly in the political business, they've got to be on our side, which is right of center, and they've got to be willing to have that be able to fight through these issues on the right side. And I don't actually care if they're with us on every position, but they have to be able to work on what we think is the right position, what our clients think is the right position. So one of the things that we do often when we're interviewing is we kind of want to shock them to see if they're going to get if they're going to get a little angry or insulted, or if they're going to get a little triggered by the interview process. So a lot of times I will sit down and the first question I'll ask is, what's your position on abortion? And it is the most random question you'll ever hear in an interview. Now they are coming into a political interview, so there is that. But the reaction is what I'm looking for, not necessarily the answer. So if they react with disgust, or they react with, being completely turned off by the question, instead of, maybe they look a little inquisitive, and that's okay. But I just want to see if they're going to be triggered, if it's going to be something that I'm gonna eventually have a problem with later on, because we're going to hit some issues that they may or may not agree with, and I need to know that they're a mature enough person that they're not going to go run to HR because we're talking about an issue that bothers them or that triggers them.
I don't know if you even know this, but we took the snowflake test to sort of the next level for anyone that we were hiring. This was in 2019 in our sort of management team. And we would put them through a high stress interview. So we did several of these interviews. Actually, my team that's here filming this probably doesn't even know it. I'll have to show you guys the old videos. But we had a guy up for sales director position, Bob Margolis. And I said, listen, man, we're going to put you through a high stress interview. And he's a huge gun guy. I was like, you bet, man. He thought we were going to take him out to the range or maybe some race car driving. We brought him on an episode of Real Man TV that we were filming where we were doing underwater escape training. And we didn't tell him what we were going to do. And we got there and he was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to do what? I said, we are going to do your final interview as you are being strapped into the fuselage of a helicopter, submerged underwater, flipped upside down, and you have to escape. And he was like, let's go. And we did it, and he passed, and he got the job. But I think that there's a lot to be said for people weeding themselves out of the process.
Absolutely.
Did you ever tell him your story about gun control?
No.
All right. So this was in 2012. This is actually how our PAC started, Constitutional Rights PAC. It got started because right after Newtown, 2 days after Newtown, as a matter of fact, the gun control crowd was walking down our block. And see, my office was in between the Republican National Committee and the NRA lobby office on First Street in D.C. And they're walking down the street screaming, "Shame the NRA." And I heard them. And we're in D.C., lots of protests. You become a little numb to them, but this one kind of triggered me. It really ticked me off because I see things a little differently, obviously, than the gun control crowd. And 22 kids had died, and their answer to that was to shame the NRA. To use it politically, and to kind of, in my opinion, spit on those kids' graves. And so I lifted up my third story window. I threw my arms out like a lunatic, full bearded. I look like a psychopath. And I screamed, shame the, they're screaming, shame the NRA. And I screamed out, arm the teachers. I think that's where that mantra comes from, by the way, because I was screaming it out the window and I'm throwing my arms out and I look down and there's like 40 cameras pointed up at me. And I figured, okay, I'm going to make the evening news. Might as well get something from it. So I went down to take on the crowd. They're still screaming shame. They're not reading. You ever see a left wing protest? It's so weird. They're so bizarre. So they come out and they're holding, everyone's holding a piece of paper, reading off the paper in unison, trying to. And it sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher. So they're going, no, 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 shame the NRA, shame the NRA. And that's just how left wingers are. It's weird, right? So I'm kind of laughing at it a little bit, and then I'm like, "Arm the teachers!" And they all turn around at me, and they turn their shame on me. So now they're going, shame, shame, right? And now like I'm laughing a little bit, I'm backing up because they're literally encroaching on my space. I mean, I don't want to have a fight here. So I turn around, and the other side are the cameras. So now I'm in a high school fight. You know, like everybody gets in a circle. One side are the cameras, the other side are the left wing protesters. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to do a press conference. And so I did. I answered questions from the media and why are you here and what are you doing and who are you and why are you saying arm the teachers? You know, a couple of days after this school shooting and you know the answer was, I said, look, if the principal in that school in Newtown, who was incredibly brave to confront the gunman, had confronted the gunman with a weapon, it may have saved 10, 15, 20 students from being killed. Instead, the principal died, a young lady. And you know, that's why we need to arm the teachers. That's why we need to arm the principals, and that's why we need to protect our kids. And the media thought I was nuts, so nuts that I was the Washington Post photo of the day hanging out the window. Some guy screaming on the teachers in the middle of D.C. after this happened. So we went back to the office, and I said, look, we're going to need to do something because every member of Congress that I had spoken to said we're going to have good members, good conservative members of Congress. We're going to have to pass some sort of gun control because the 20 kids, we don't have a choice, you know. And I said, the hell you don't. And the NRA was completely silent. They didn't come out when people were saying shame the NRA. They didn't come out till 2 or 3 weeks later. And maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't want to seem political in that circumstance, but they weren't the ones who were being political. They were being attacked, and they were attacking our Second Amendment right. And so they should have come out and they should have fought.
Yeah, the wrong PR firm. Just saying. SilentPartnerMarketing.com.
Absolutely, they'd be wise to hire a guy. Look, the idea that nobody was standing up said I got to. So I sent out a press release after that event, and I called for. As a matter of fact, I got in touch with my friend who I knew was going to stand with me, which is Alan Gottlieb from the Second Amendment Foundation. And I said, Alan, you got the gun group. I want to do this. Let's do it together. And we called for National Gun Appreciation Day. And we called for it on January 19th, 2013, which was the day before Obama's inauguration. So all of this happened. We figured 2 weeks to get people, you know, fired up about gun rights, and turn people out on the day before the inauguration just to kind of poke a needle at Barack Obama, ruin his weekend, so I sent out that press release. An hour later, I had ABC, CBS, USA Today at my doorstep. Never happened before. It was crazy. They all wanted to talk to the crazy gun nut who wanted to bring National Gun Appreciation Day after this tragic event. And they thought they could make us all look crazy and get gun control passed. And what happened was I wound up doing every left-wing outlet I could. I did CNN twice. I did MSNBC 5 or 6 times. I did Fox. I did Geraldo. Every left-wing reporter wanted to talk to us. And really they thought that the more I talked, the more people would come to their side. But all I did was just like I did in that makeshift press conference, was talk logically about how if we protect our kids, by having not only arming the teachers, but having, a Second Amendment that would allow like the NRA finally came out and they actually had a good line. They said, we need a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. And that was kind of the message. And we turned the conversation from gun control to gun rights. And by the end of January, it was all a gun rights conversation. Joe Biden made one guarantee that they would pass gun control before the end of January. We not only made Joe Biden a liar, he was already a liar, he still is a liar. But not only do we make Joe Biden a liar, but we also gave Barack Obama his first and at that point only policy defeat. And what was interesting is when CNN called us, they said, we're going to have you on with this woman, and you guys will have a panel, and she's obviously on the other side. So I looked her up, and she was with MoveOn.org, and she was, I mean, what I say this with a degree of complimentary. She was an incredible race baiter. I mean, I saw a couple of clips. She's made a Republican cry on TV over it. She was very, very good. And their attack was going to be that I was racist because I selected Martin Luther King Jr. weekend to do this, right? And I kind of saw it coming. So I got to the CNN studios. We're in the green room together. And I'm like, it's about the kids. And I showed a picture of my kids, showed me a picture of her kids. We kind of connected in a non-partisan way, in a friendly way. And we got into the studio, and she was a little disarmed, right? We can come to a conclusion. She thought I was going to be on her side, right? Or give in a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, before we get started, I want to address the Martin Luther King charge that has been leveled against me, about Gun Appreciation Day. Because I think Martin Luther King Jr. Would be honored by Gun Appreciation Day, right? And I didn't get to finish my thought because the thought was Martin Luther King Jr., most people don't know this, but was denied a gun permit when he was very young. And it really propelled him into the civil rights movement because the Second Amendment is a civil right, right? Now, if we would have gotten all that out, it would have made a little more sense. But I said something my wife promised, it begged me not to say on national television, but I thought it was important, so I did. And I said, look, if slaves had guns, there wouldn't be slavery. It's that slaves weren't allowed to have guns that, that they were able to enslave. And she went, what? And her mind blew up. She couldn't get a sentence out. It was great. And then they cut the interview short because the interviewer saw that
wasn't going well.
It wasn't going well for them. And I get back to the green room. Her mind's still blown. She couldn't believe what I said on national television. And I get a call. Larry, hello. I gotta have you on my show. Who's this? Reverend Al. Okay, I'm doing a Reverend Al show. And you know what? What's funny is not enough conservatives are willing to go into enemy territory. And what happened, I think, and this is part of the reason, because conservatives don't get called on CNN very much anymore.
Right.
They don't get called on MSNBC anymore. They used to want to have us on until Trump. Because what they did is they gave Trump all of this airtime, and they realized what was happening, which was the same thing that happened with Gun Appreciation Day, is we were making sense to the audience.
Right.
And we were persuading people that gun rights was the answer and not gun control. And when Trump went on television, and they thought he was talking crazy, but he was connecting with their audience. He was connecting with the union voter. He was connecting with the forgotten man that was watching MSNBC and CNN. And when he connected with that audience, they said, we can't do this anymore. We can't bring conservatives. We'll just ice them out. And that's really, I think, kind of the beginning of the cancel culture and the hardcore censorship. Because if they let us speak, we win the argument. So they can't let us speak, right? And so that's where we're at right now, is we're fighting that battle, because we've been throttled, we've been shadow banned, we've been canceled. You've been canceled, you know,
Since
more
before it
times
was
than,
cool.
yes, it's way before it was cool. On and off LinkedIn, on and off Facebook, on and off Twitter. You know, it's a constant battle that we fight. That's why we did the Parallel Economy Conference.
That's exactly right. I mean, we've been fighting the fight not for us. I mean, yeah, sure. There's the element of like we have businesses to run and families to provide for at the end of the day, but the bigger picture here of I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you're in America where you deserve that First Amendment right? Like you deserve the right to share your thought. And I think when the mainstream media steps in and Facebook steps in and the fact checkers step in, not to actually check fact, but to advance their own political agenda, I think that we're telling the American people, you're too stupid to figure stuff out on your own. You're too stupid to do your own homework or to do your own research. There's no other explanation for why you would shut down an opinion that is different than that of your own. And so I even feel the same way about, like, we had this conversation with all the Black Lives Matter riots, which were turned into riots in many cases, not because of Black Lives Matter, but because Antifa came in and saw an opportunity to divide people. I believe that everyone who's out there has a right to peacefully and calmly protest. When it turns violent, I don't care if you're on the right, you're on the left, it doesn't matter. As soon as it turns violent, that's a whole different conversation. That's no longer about talking. That's no longer about communicating. That's about anarchy. And we can't have a society built on anarchy and the destruction of the rule of law, but we also can't have a functioning democracy or constitutional republic, in our case, built on the idea that you can silence everybody or try and kill the person or the people that you don't agree with politically. And I think that's where it gets dangerous. But man, you've lived an entire career where freedom of speech isn't something that you always get.
It's not, but I celebrate it. Conversations like this, I don't 100% agree. Because while you were fighting with the NRA, the people banning the NRA, and I don't think that's right that they did that. I was in Newtown. I was hugging people. I was going to kids' funerals. It's not all about politics.
Oh, no, it's absolutely not.
It's about families that have. I'm not picking on you. No. But I'm saying, shame on people that politicize stuff like this, because these are lives. Our lives matter. Our kids' lives matter. Those teachers' lives matter. Yes, I wish there was a way that we could have prevented that mass tragedy through some kind of vehicle such as you're saying. But the politicalization, when people rush to judgment when there is a tragedy and try to make it a bigger cause, is, to me, absolutely disgusting.
It is.
It is. Because at the end of the day is, okay, well, come do what I did. Well, come let that carry in my soul for the rest of my life. Go tell those 20 plus troopers who never came back to work that this is all about guns. No way.
No, it was a tragedy. It was one of the worst tragedies we've experienced in our entire life, right? But here's the thing. I would have never used that.
I understand. No, you were brought into it.
But I was literally, I think God kind of kept me there in the middle of their protest, directly in the middle of their protest, from the RNC to the NRA lobby office, where they're screaming, shame the NRA. They turned it. The leftists always turn tragedy. The mayor of Chicago said, never let a good tragedy go to waste, right? That is exactly who they are. Mm-hmm. But if you don't stand up to them at that moment, we would have had gun control, and how many more kids would have died?
Yeah, but we did, unfortunately, in our country, we speak a different language. So you talk about riots during George Floyd and all this stuff. To me, January 6th was equally as disgusting. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, but you know what? When you go into the Capitol, you have violated the law. You have invaded all of our house, no matter what your cause is, right? And for some people to say to me, oh, well, they're just a bunch of thugs and this and that. Listen, I'm telling you, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 78% of the people or something like that were arrested weren't even from there.
Yep.
They were there looting buildings and making profit.
Okay, here's the problem. I'm gonna weigh in on this one. You break the law, there should be consequences. I think we're all in agreement. I don't give a damn what your political perspective is. You break the law, there are consequences. You break shit, there are consequences. You hurt people, there are consequences. I think we're all aligned on that. The problem is the consequences. So you're telling me, not you, but generally speaking, that you have the woman who's now been coronated as the queen, who's running for president, who was promoting a bail fund to take the people who were burning down cities and who were arrested, to immediately free them without bail and then get all charges against them dismissed. And that's okay. But people who walked in, a grandmother who walked around and didn't destroy any property, but walked around a building on January 6th facing decades behind bars, there are two schools of
No,
justice.
I'm not saying that she should face that, but she should know that that wasn't something you should do.
Well, let's take a step back, because I was there.
Okay.
I was there January 6th. I think it was important to have that protest January 6th at the Capitol. I am firmly believe that the Eastman theory that he came up with about slowing down the process so that we could figure out what happened, in November of 2020, was very important. So the January 6th deal, I think, as a protest, was necessary. I think it was important. I think it was a trap. And what I mean by that is there were, and I, we had an inkling that it was going to be a trap. I still think it was important to go, but in a trap in terms of entrapment, a very, very large majority of the people that actually walked into the Capitol and were peaceful were waved in. Were waved in by Capitol police officers because they were told to be waved in.
And the doors were open from the inside.
Doors were open. And they walked in and they said, "Stop the steal," and they left peacefully. Now, there are people who broke stuff, who, hit personal property. All of those people should face consequences of jail. Anybody who, assaulted a police officer unlawfully should face those kind of consequences. That's not what happened. The federal government used that as a means to track down thousands of people. Thousands of people weren't violent. Thousands of people were not destructive. But they had thousands of people that they have rounded up. They've used the FBI for 2 years. Their only assignment was to find January 6ers and arrest them. And more importantly, and this is something that is a passion of ours, mine personally, and a project that we're working on with the PAC, is trying to get legislation put together and passed in obviously the next, once we win the White House and Congress. I think is very important, is the only way we end the weaponization of the federal government, and this is, I think, the only way, is we give the defendants the right to change venue, not the privilege, not we have to ask a judge if we could change venue, but you have a right to a jury of your peers. And the whole idea of the jury of your peers was so that you weren't facing a jury of your political opponents. And right now, anybody who's tried in DC that's a conservative is facing a jury of their political opponents. If you're America First, you're facing a jury of your political opponents. You don't have to look very far. You can look in the headlines every day. Donald Trump has been going through this for the entire for his entire presidency and beyond. He's going to be maybe thrown in jail because he's been facing nothing but a jury of his political opponents, like in New York and in DC. But if the feds, the Department of Justice would not be bringing these cases, these January 6th cases, if they had to be heard in
Arkansas
or Montana.
No, I agree with you, but welcome to being a minority in America, right? how many people are now getting out of jail because they were wrongfully imprisoned. It's not right, but I hate that people cry a different platform. It's all the same. Okay, I'm sorry. If you went in on January 6th and destroyed property, you're no better than the rioters. But why do rioters get such a negative connotation? Oh, I was just in the White House. Hey, man, if I open the door to your house and people are tearing it apart, I'm not walking in there. You know what I mean? This is not a good situation. I don't want to be here.
Well, here's why they walked in my opinion. Now, I didn't go in. I've been in the Capitol plenty of times. It's not something I wasn't sightseeing, right? And you know, quite frankly, I'm more politically astute, and I knew I probably shouldn't go in there. A lot of people didn't know; they were waved in, right? So why they went in is because there were two other protests, Stop the Steal protests, that brought 1 million people to D.C. I was at one of them. The one of them was we marched to the Supreme Court and we said stop the steal. The other one was actually had a little more than 1 million people, and they said stop the steal, and nobody took us seriously. So we get to the Capitol after and we march from the White House to the Capitol building. And when you go to a protest and you show up with 2 million people, and there were 2 million people at the January 6th protest, that's a lot
huge.
of people. It's a huge protest. And not a single member of Congress comes out to address us. Not a single member of, the only person who spoke to us that day was Donald Trump. He was the only one. And he said peacefully and patriotically protest. That's what he said. And so on January 6th, when we're saying stop the steal, and we got ignored the first 2 times we came with 1 million people, we wanted to be heard. That's why we went to the Capitol. It's the people's house. If you're going to protest somewhere, you don't do it in the middle of a city and burn down other people's businesses. You do it at the people's house. You do it in the state house, in the place. You go to the place where they make policy and they sign laws. That's where you do it. That was the intent, right? So you go there and people, look, quite frankly, I think they made a mistake going in the Capitol, but they did. And they went because they wanted to be heard. No one was listening. And all they wanted to hear, stop the steal, slow this down. We do not believe this was a fair election. Let's get some investigations. And I don't want to hear that these courts looked at it and said there was no evidence. The courts didn't look at it.
Right.
They said you don't have standing. They kicked all these cases out because no one had quote unquote standing. They were chicken. Right? They didn't want to actually look at the evidence. You know, Bill Barr said, we're going to put somebody on this and we're going to investigate it. 2 days later, he put 2 agents on the steal, on election fraud. 2 agents that made no phone calls to anybody who was an election official, to anybody who was questioning. They looked at no evidence. They came back after 2 days and said, there's no election fraud here. You know, 2 million people went to the Capitol because we were tired of that type of answer, patting you on the head and saying, you know, we appreciate that you saying stop the steal, but we got this. You're gonna get Joe Biden and like it, and we didn't like it, so that's why we went.
Well, if you look at DC, 2020 during the riots, we were reporting in real time. We had a guy on the ground with law enforcement today who was showing the attacks on Secret Service, pulling back the barricade at the White House, climbing the wall at the White House. It got to the point where in the middle of the night, all of the lights, this was actually a pretty cool moment, all of the lights at the White House went dark. Everything went out. This was during all of the anarchy, and everyone started celebrating. Yeah, we got him to go hide in the basement, and everything went pitch black. And then they rolled out with night vision and less lethal, and all of a sudden you hear thwack, thwack, and people screaming because the violence got so bad that there were in the summer of love, there were tens of thousands of officers who were violently attacked and injured. We have next month we've got Ann Dorn who's coming out. Her late husband, Captain David Dorn, was murdered during all of these riots. And so, last month you saw the Palestinian protests in the Capitol. In the Capitol, they went in, there was violence, there was anarchy, not to the extent of January 6th. But so again, my issue is is fair and equal justice under the law. And so if we're going to treat one group, insert group here, I don't care who it is, I don't care if you're black or white or Hispanic or Democrat or Republican, if you're going to treat them like that, you have to do the same thing over here. And I actually kind of want to piggyback on what you said, because I think you're right about the two schools of justice for minorities in America. You are absolutely right. And this is why we are seeing so many of these cases overturned. And you know who arguably put more young black men in prison for marijuana than any other prosecutor in the country is Kamala Harris. And so it is a problem. My point on this isn't to point fingers at an individual. It's to show that it happened on both sides.
Oh, I know, but it just happens she's running for president. She's not your choice. I understand that. And being in the middle, again, all I care about is law enforcement. I care about the cops that got hurt that day. care about subsequently the cops that died, right? I get it. But it is, to me, in my opinion, just like a riot. And there, like you said, there's good people that go to protest and they turn into riots, and they're not bad people. The minute that stuff turns, like you did, time to get out of here.
I'm out.
I'm out of here. I was in here, absolutely. But when it started getting weird, I'm out, and that's one of our divisive things in this country.
I was there till late, but I was just in a...
Yeah, but that's one of our divisive problems with this country. Rules are different.
I spoke to a Capitol Police officer for about a half hour, and he was great. He's like, and he goes, we see this. He was of the opinion this is not that big of a deal. We see these protests all the time. It's a big one, but you guys are so nice. Everybody here is so polite and so friendly. Yeah, there were some pockets of bad people, and it turns out
that's who ruins it for everything, right?
It turns out that a lot of those people, I won't say all of them, because I think when emotions run hot,
people are idiots.
People are idiots, right? But I think what the people who triggered the violence were plants.
Congressman Clay Higgins came out and testified that, to his knowledge, there were over 200 federal agents who were involved in this.
And NCIs. Yeah.
Right. And so when the tapes started being released, one of the reasons that they didn't want the tapes released was because so many of these undercover agents and CIs, their identities would have been revealed and subsequently have been. And so again, this to me, it's not about levers, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very clearly unapologetically a biblical conservative. That's how I roll. But I would hold the same people accountable to that same level of repercussions on both sides. I think that's the only way in society that we move forward fairly. It doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter who you vote for, doesn't matter who you sleep with. The same standard has to apply in the rule of law. We have a very long way to go in this society to get to that point.
We do it. And you're saying Kamala, right? So Kamala is the perfect example of left-wing weaponization. She was perfectly happy to use the full extent of the law and even beyond. From what I understand, and I'd have to get some specific details, is she kept people in jail longer than their sentences, so that they could be used as labor for the state. That's the kind of woman she was when it comes to regular, ordinary people. But when it comes to political apparatus, when it comes to Antifa, which are akin to the brown shirts, right? That's what they are. The Antifa and what was going on during the riots, she was bailing those people out because they were criminals for her side. And that's what it's about. And that's why look, anybody who is been a target of the federal government, I have been. I've been a target of the federal government. Right after Gun Appreciation Day, we held the Million Veterans March. I don't know if you remember this, but we did the Million Veterans March on the World War II Memorial when Barack Obama closed the war memorials, and he put up barricades in front of them when the government shut down in fall of 2013. We called for the Million Veterans March because the World War II veterans were being denied. They were coming in what they call honor flights to see the World War II memorial. And they were being denied. They couldn't get access to the World War II memorial because they put up these barricades. And these men only have like really one shot left to see the World War II memorial that was made in their honor. And, so he's like, well, we're going to call for a Million Veterans March, and we're going to rip up those barricades. And we peacefully returned them to the White House. It was actually one of the best days of my professional and personal life. It was great to see veterans come together and stand up to the government at that moment. And we returned the barricades to the White House, and it was a big deal. I mean, Fox covered it wall to wall, and it was a big story. And we actually, again, turned the narrative of the shutdown back on Obama, which where it belonged at the time. But 2 weeks later, I get a letter from the Internal Revenue Service saying that I had paid my taxes on a business I had closed in 2002, over 10 years prior. Paid all my taxes. They weren't saying we didn't pay our taxes. They said we can't find your W-2s. So we're going to assess a $50,000 penalty to you personally. It's just made up. They just made it up. Right? So I got that letter, called an attorney, cost me $3,000. We got it washed over. But what's interesting is my attorneys, and I also talked to some attorneys at a group called Judicial Watch, and the investigator at Judicial Watch at the time said, listen, you got to understand, for the federal government, the process is the punishment. The process is the punishment. They're coming after you. First of all, letting you know that they're watching. And second of all, they're making you go through this hell so you think twice about it again.
It's chilling, man.
And let me bring that point home. Since January 6th, how many conservative protests have we seen at the Capitol?
None.
None. What they did was the weaponization of government, just like the Silicon Valley has done to silence conservatives. What they did with weaponization of government is they made us shut up and not show up. And that's the biggest tragedy, is we have a right and an obligation to protest and our grievances at the Capitol, at the people's house. And we haven't done so because people are afraid of their government.
But I continue to see violent protests on college campuses across the country. We're at the Capitol. So we're in some weird times.
Charges were just dropped on 300 people who were violent at these protests on the campus. Those charges were dropped. The January 6th charges, even after the Supreme Court said that you can't charge them for this particular crime of disrupting because they misapplied it. The federal government's still not letting people out.
Shameless plug time. The PAC, whatever.
ConstitutionalRightsPAC.com. Constitutional Rights PAC. We are the little PAC.
Excuse me.
We have no big donors. We operate solely on small contributions, but we get a lot done. We've had some really, really big wins and big successes, and our focus obviously now is getting conservatives elected in Congress and in the White House. We want to win the White House very, very badly. But there's one member who I know you've endorsed, that I've endorsed, that I want to just also plug, and that's John Fabricatori. He's a former ICE agent. He was actually running ICE for Colorado and Wyoming. He happened to go to high school with me, so we graduated at the same time. And
there's no age limit on qualifying?
There's no age limit. Okay. I'm very old. He's very old, but he looks much better than I do. He was an MMA. He's a professional MMA fighter. He's a professional wrestler. Was an ICE agent, and he's just one badass dude that wants to go to Congress and fight for you. So please, you can help him out by going to ConstitutionalRightsPAC.com, and you'll see his candidate page, or you can go to his website, John Fabricatori. You're going to have to probably spell that for Congress, John Fab for Congress, I think also. Check him out and support him. These are the kind of guys we need in Congress.
I'm a big believer that the more men and women that we have running for Congress that serve the country, Democrat or Republican, that served in law enforcement or that served in the military. I think it's crucial. And one of the most telling things to me about sort of where we are in society. So there are 3 snipers in Congress right now. You have Eli Crane, my best buddy. You have Marcus Luttrell, and you have Corey Mills from Florida. And the 3 of them, the only 3 veteran snipers, Eli is a Navy SEAL, Luttrell, none of them were allowed anywhere near the committee that is investigating the assassination attempts. 3 snipers in Congress, none of them are allowed anywhere near it. If that doesn't wake us up when you have political hacks who are put on task forces, but people who are actually highly educated and experts in their space who are not allowed on it, I think it says a lot about where we are in society. So, man, I just love you. I love chilling with you. I love being on the shows with you and love having you on. So,
absolutely.
Parting thoughts?
Law enforcement, that's what I'm here for. I'm politically neutral. I support his thoughts, even if I disagree with some of them. But the one thing I'm proud of is he's an American and he's exercising his right to speech.
Parting thoughts?
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. And like I said, this election, you hear it almost every year, but this election, if we get this wrong, if we put in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz into the White House, we're never going to get our country back. Even if you don't have a taste for Donald Trump and his mean tweets and the whole 9 yards, you gotta vote for Trump. You gotta vote for Trump. You gotta get out and vote, and make sure that you bring 10 neighbors with you. So it's super important.
Guys, I love you all. Thanks for watching. God bless you all. God bless America.
Thank you for joining us at Choir Practice. For more, please visit lawenforcementtoday.com.